Welcome to our color bean panel. Wow, what a great group of people this morning. It's full house. I think the first thing that we ought to do is get a selfie, right? Come on over here. Come on over here. It's a great group. Perfect. It's lit up. Okay. Everybody lean in. Oh, got to make sure it's turned on. There we go. No, the lens cap isn't on. Perfect. All right, let's get it started. Okay, first I'll introduce our panelists. On the far right, my esteemed colleague from the United States, Joe Cramer. Meng is next to him from China. Tewodros Yilma from Ethiopia. Lazara from Argentina. And I forget this guy's name. Oh, Marcelo Luders from Brazil. Welcome everyone. I think many of you know Randy Fairman from prior conventions. Randy Fairman is actually my brother-in-law, and he is going to really hear from me when I next see him, because Randy called me 2 days ago, three days ago, from the airport and said, "Randy, I'm at the airport, and guess what? I filled up my visa application, and I think I forgot to hit the submit button. And my flight leaves in 5 hours. This was actually over the weekend. And he said, I think I'm going to have a problem getting there. And he actually stayed near the airport for a couple days, but he didn't get his visa in time. So he's going to be hearing from me at Christmas about missing this meeting and making me go up here again. Anyway, so I'm giving Randy Fairman's presentation today. If you don't like the numbers, I'll give you his phone number. So without further ado, let's give a global overview on the bean trade. This is what the annual dry bean exports by origin look like. If you look at this, look at these numbers, they're mostly fairly consistent, but in the blue in the center, you can see quite a difference with China, right? And one that's missing here, just simply because we don't have the export numbers, is Ethiopia. Ethiopia does a substantial amount of exports, but they're not part of the global trade atlas. So Randy couldn't pull up those numbers. As you can see here, really the top 5 exporters account for well over 90% of all the exports. So in the dry bean, colored dry bean sector, it's largely controlled by just a few countries. From 2008 to 2012, net international trade of color beans was consistently more than 1.6 million tons. But as China has withdrawn from the dry bean trade, you'll see that the net international trade has decreased markedly. The Chinese bean trade appears to have been replaced with beans grown domestically in Brazil. There's been an increase, and I think there's also been some increase in Argentina, but I'll let our panelists comment about that further. In terms of speckled bean production, as 2018 cranberry supplies appear to have been more than adequate, and 2019 production is anticipated to be slightly below 2018 overall. Assuming weather cooperates, it appears that cranberry bean supply will be more than adequate in 2019. Here we have added North American pinto beans and Chinese speckled beans into the picture. Worldwide supply at the end of 2018 appears to have been more than adequate, with carryover from 2017 supplementing the production. Reduced production in 2019 should provide some relief from the excess supplies that we had in the speckled bean markets in 2018. Here we have added, this shows you just how important Brazil is in the speckled bean sector, just to give it some perspective, right? Here we have added the carioca bean, which is the largest speckled bean variety grown in the world in terms of volume, to the picture, just to highlight the importance of Brazil when it comes to speckled beans. They're just a huge, huge producer of speckled beans. And here's just a kind of a picture of what speckled bean outlook is like overall. 550,000 tons in North America, about 1,800,000 tons in Brazil, and the rest you can see. Brazil has several crops per year, 3 crops per year, and I think there's some question about what the condition of planting is like in both Brazil and Mexico, but I'll let Marcelo talk a little bit more about that. In terms of dark red kidney bean production, in 2018 the dark red kidney bean supply has been very tight. Assuming the weather is good, I think we're likely to see a slight increase in total production that's adequate to cover growing demand. Although I think there have been some weather issues again in terms of planting in some regions and harvesting. But we'll let Martin talk about that. Martin talk about that. This is a dark red kidney bean outlook for 2018 as estimated by Mr. Fairman. There's actually growing demand within China, and that's definitely changing the global picture for Chinese or for dark red kidney beans as the internal demand increases significantly in China. There's a 2019 carrion demand that's substantial. The 2019 harvest is slightly up from 2018, I believe, in Argentina. And total supply and demand appear to be more or less in equilibrium in the dark red kidney bean markets. Although, having said that, the overall trend for dark red kidney beans has just been increasing each year, I think more or less for the last 10 years. But maybe Cindy Brown knows more about that than I do, so you can ask her on your own. In terms of light red kidney bean production, the supply for 2018 was a bit tight. There was a fair amount of demand in Central America and some other markets. The 2019 light red kidney bean production is anticipated to be slightly lower than 2018, which should lead to another year of fairly tight supplies in the light red kidney bean markets. And again, just to give you a overview on that, North American demand has been steady. The 2019 Canadian harvest is expected to increase a bit. And the panelists yesterday on the white bean panels talked a bit about that, being driven in part by the 25% EU tariffs on U.S. beans. And I would expect the Canadians to keep increasing production as long as they're going to have a 25% advantage over the U.S. We'll let Joe talk a little bit more about that. Total supply, again, marginally adequate. It's fairly tight, but more or less in balance. In terms of black bean production, the typical black bean export countries anticipate somewhat lower production in 2019. This is expected to bring a welcome reduction to the anticipated excess of 2018 crop. Overall, black bean demand has been good. And black beans, particularly in North America, the United States, demand continues to grow. But again, I'll let Mr. Cramer comment on that. Black bean production, once we include, yeah, that's right, okay. Once we include production in Mexico and Brazil, we see the recent years have been had a relatively stable black bean production. One of the, I think, interesting things that's happened this year, if you look at the global trade data, you actually see exports of black beans, beans going from Mexico. I assume they're black beans, maybe you know, Joe, going from Mexico into Venezuela, in sizable volumes. And then Mexico's importing beans from its neighbor to the north. So I guess it's kind of serving as a conduit for the black bean trade into Venezuela. The black bean outlook, again, North American consumption is improving. Chinese exports have continued to drop. Reportedly nearly out of the black bean business. Volumes have gotten so low in China, but I'll let Meng comment more on that. Demand has a lot to do with the Brazilian carioca production cycle. So if there's a poor crop in carioca beans, often I think the black bean demand goes up. And then Argentina exports more and affects everybody else that's producing black beans. But again, Marcelo, we'll look for Marcelo for some more comments on that. In terms of let's look at some specific countries. This is Chinese combined production. It's really an amazing chart to me. It's shown how rapidly production has decreased in China for beans. China used to be a major exporter of beans, and now I think with increased demand domestically and decreased production, they are not having much of an impact. But again, Meng can talk more about that. Argentina combined production, appears to be fairly stable. I think there's been a lot of beans got planted late this year in Argentina, from what I've heard, so there's still a lot of beans out there to be harvested, and we'll let Martin tell us as to whether there's any concerns about that or not. This is U.S. combined production and anticipated production for 2019. More or less stable, with a slight increase in black bean production, a drop in pinto bean production, and a drop in navy beans. Navy beans in particular are exported in large numbers to the EU. And so we heard the white bean panel yesterday talk about how production in Canada of white beans is increasing as a result of the retaliatory tariffs in the Trump trade war. So that's an overview of the color bean supply and demand. With that, I'll ask maybe a couple follow-up questions to our panelists. First, Martin, how do you see the new crop for color beans in Argentina?
Thanks for the question, Randy. Generally speaking, we are predicting some normal crops in Argentina. We are very optimistic about quality in Argentina this year. We are really very confident about that. Still some time to go for harvesting, but up to now everything looks very good. We are still crossing our fingers, but we are really happy of what we are seeing in terms of quality, which that is why we are optimistic, considering Argentina is a reliable origin for beans, so we are expecting a good season now. Starting with the dark red kidney beans, I am going to speak only about export figures, not production, but export. We are predicting with the Argentine Chamber of Policies around 14,000 metric tons for export, no carryover. regarding light red kidney beans, we are expecting more or less the same figures as previous season, means between 5,000 to 6,000 metric tons for export. Black beans is the only color beans where we are seeing some carryover. If we need to make some difference between dark red kidney, light red kidney, blacks and cranberry, we are predicting a smaller crop. I mean, not smaller, but considering the figures I see, we are watching some 140,000 metric tons for export, plus around 20,000 metric tons for carryover. So in total, for export will be around 160,000 metric tons between new crop and what is left for carryover. And regarding cranberry beans, we are expecting for export around 18,000 metric tons. For the time being, everything is looking good. As I said, we are still some time to go, but we are very confident this season for color beans in Argentina.
Excellent. So let me take just a moment to talk about Ethiopia, which is not on the slides, on Randy Fairman's slides. Ethiopia produces a lot of red beans, small red kidney beans in particular. The 5-year average for that is between 250 to 300,000. I've been told that they expect the red bean production to be at about 328,000 metric tons this year for 2019, which is a 14% increase over the 5-year average. Light red kidney beans, the expectation, normally they're producing about 71,000 metric tons in terms of 5-year average. It's expected to decrease to 40,000 tons this year. That's a substantial drop, obviously, and we'll have Tewodros talk about that in just a minute. Pinto bean production, 5-year average is about 30,000 tons, and more or less expecting it to fall within the average range. Light brown kidney beans, 5-year average 40,000. Black bean production, the 5-year average is about 15,000. Black beans have been trending upward in production in Ethiopia, and again, I'll let Tewodros touch on that. Cream beans, 5-year average 8,000 tons, and then last but not least, light speckled 20,000 tons. Okay. With that, Tewodros, can you tell us what's going on with the small red kidney bean market? Why the large increase in production this year?
Thank you, Randy. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tewodros. I'm from Ethiopia, a company called Alpha Trading. Well, before we see the production of the RKB or the other colored beans, overall coverage area right now between pulses and cereals is about 1.6 million hectares. And we expect this to increase over the coming years. When we come to the color beans, especially the RKB, we started, within our association, we started to do a pre-harvest assessment based on the data we gathered for 2019. The expected crop is around 328,000 metric tons. Out of this, 15% of it is light red. Otherwise, the rest is small dark red kidney beans. The increase is because of the demand, and especially the new markets, minor Asian markets, and Ethiopia also started in a very small quantity going into Chinese markets as well. And there is a Russian market, and very small quantity goes to Europe as well. Nowadays, we are seeing also there is a border trade growing up, especially going into Kenya, our neighboring market. Other than that, the southern part of Ethiopia also consume red kidney beans. Out of all the colored beans Ethiopia produce, there is red speckled kidney beans. Production actually a little bit decreased because of different factors. Average production right now is expected to be around 40,000 metric tons. Light speckled kidney beans average is right now around 20,000 metric tons. Light brown kidney beans, now it has increased a lot because of the high demand coming from different destinations. It is about 40,000 metric ton. It has reached to 40,000 metric ton. Black beans were very small. Exports started a few years back. Now the production also mostly geared because of the demand coming from different destinations. Now it's about 15,000 metric tons Ethiopia produce black beans. Cream beans also the demand has grown a lot and it's average around 8,000 metric tons, and Pinto is the last one, which is around 30,000 metric tons. And we expect these numbers to grow because the demand is also increasing. New markets, new destinations are opening up. Previously, Ethiopian origin were not that much known in the market, in the pulse market. Quality is also started to improve, especially when we see the dark red kidney beans. A lot of technology came into the country. People are exporting nicely clean, polished products. So that also increased the demand, which also have an effect of farming or producing more and more each time. So this is overall situation in Ethiopia right now.
Perfect. Well, I having been to your plant, I can verify what a great place it is. Really producing great product.
Thank you.
Although Joe might be a little bit concerned about you producing black beans, given that he's from Michigan. Joe, tell us a little bit about the planting conditions this year in the U.S. and how that looks.
Sure, and of course we are worried about that black bean production in Ethiopia, but generally speaking, in the U.S., the dry bean crop is gone in pretty decent shape. The weather that you hear about in the news a lot that's affected corn and soy planting in a big way is much lesser of an issue in the dry bean production areas. Michigan's probably the last area to be planted, and we're extremely wet. This week would probably be our big planting week if conditions were right. But having said that, we've planted a crop much later in the month of June and still gotten a really good crop. So as we come off a real nice crop last year with big yields, I think we carry in a few more pinto beans than we'd probably like. Our black bean inventory, for the most part, I think is sold, but our sold unshipped number is quite high. So I think we'll see an adjustment in pinto bean acreage on the downside. I think we'll see black bean acreage increased in the Mindak region, maybe as much as 20%. Michigan, I think, will be fairly steady in black bean production, as will every place else in the country that produces black beans. I thought I'd comment just briefly on cranberry beans. I think there's a little bit of carryover in Ontario, according to Marion, but it's not negligible, and we're pretty well cleaned up in Michigan. So I think acreage is fairly steady in the U.S. and maybe up a little bit in particularly in Ontario. Our kidney bean numbers, I think, are fairly steady. The charts, I talked to Cindy and Charles a bit yesterday, and they agreed with the numbers that Randy had presented. In Michigan, we're going to be fairly steady on light reds that we've all but cleaned out. I think the Mindak region is probably in the same boat on light reds, and I think dark red kidney bean acreage will be fairly steady. That's probably about it for Michigan right now, or for the U.S.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, how late can you plant without being concerned about the frost in Michigan?
That's a really good question. The later we go, we always talk about that a lot because it's a concern, but it seems like our average frost dates across the dry bean production area across the country has been pushed back into the fall later than it was maybe 10 or 15 years ago. But we've planted beans into the first week of July in the past and harvested a decent crop. So it's not ideal, and it kind of puts you in neutral through the growing season because of the uncertainty on the other end in terms of trading. But we've harvested a decent crop that was planted fairly late. So we're still pretty optimistic that we can have a nice crop.
Good, good. Okay, next question is from Meng. What's happened with the Chinese production and exports? I found that chart to be very interesting. It looks like exports have dropped by, I don't know what, 75% or something.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Actually, yesterday afternoon I said I'm David, but I'm Meng from Nanjing, China. Actually, China product, I think in near future, China will become the net import country instead of export country. Because, 2008, we export colored beans is more than 800,000 metric tons. But last year, all of the year, we export only 207,000 metric tons. Is drop 75%. The main reason is now China is the main producing area is from northeast. This also is big produce area for the soybean. China government now let the farmer to plant enough soybean because if they plant soybean and corn, they can get enough money from the government. But for pulses, no any money to back. Also, if the farmer choose to plant corn and soybean, government give the price to purchase. Every year, government can purchase. But for pulses, only export. But fortunately, now China market is changed. Local market for the huge demand, also for the just from see the PPT, we also import dark red kidney beans. This year we import several thousand tons dark red kidney beans from Thailand, but it's not a legal business from border trade. Also, China for import some pulses from Ethiopia. Same, it's not a legal business, it's border trading. So in the future, we hope this country with China government reach some agreement. Then I think very huge demand and a good market for pulses in China.
Excellent. If the Chinese will eat 1 cup of beans per month, we couldn't possibly produce enough.
Yes. Actually, China, the cranberry beans for the Xinjiang round, maybe my Turkey friend, Mr. Ona and Mr. Tuba know. This special for first market is for Turkey. But most of the cargo moving to Iran because this product is very popular in Iran market. But now we face the big problem is Iran have a big problem with section from USA. Now at present from north of China, we cannot find any ship line to load any cargo to Iran direct. So maybe we still need a ship to Turkey. But we don't know what about Turkey, the situation from Turkey to Iran. Maybe Mr. Tuba can share some information with us. But for cranberry, long ship, our biggest market is from India. Unfortunately, in last 3 years, the quantity also reduced because India now have very good choice to purchase from South Africa, Ethiopia, Kyrgyzstan, because their price is more competitive. So, generally speaking, China market will change. export to import.
Okay,
you.
very, very interesting indeed. In such a short period of time, that's just amazing. Just amazing. All right, so let me ask a question of Marcelo, of the largest bean production country in the world. Will Brazil increase production of other bean types? Do you expect that?
Yes, we continue working with the number stable, 3 million and 100 tons. We consume part of this, the most important part, around 2 million and 900 per year. And what happened and what is distinct? Some years ago, we began with the government, with the researchers and the exporters, growers, to develop some seeds, distinct seeds in cranberry beans, light specklet, dark red kidney, some vignas like brown beans and other mung beans. And the total that we have now is similar some years ago, but we have more and more distinct types of beans. What is the idea? First, we have this good consumption in domestic market, and we believe it's possible to improve more. We consume now around 16 kilos per capita per year, and without any marketing in this. With the 2016, the International Year of Pulses, we're working and started the idea to stimulate the people and give this information, more information about how health is eat the beans. After now, in this year, with the February 10, we worked a lot to put this in the schools, stimulate the people to taste the chickpeas. We have chickpeas now too. This is recently. And this domestic market, we feeling is possible. We have more consumption. For another hand, we look into the international market and looking for and find some alternatives, good alternatives with light specklet. Last year we export light specklet. This year the idea is export again around 10,000 tons in light specklet. Something cranberry, but few quantity is not a big quantity. And only to remember, in 2010 we exported 20,000 tons, but only in two beans. Last year, we exported 162,000 tons in 9 distinct pulses. Okay, this gives the idea how is the evolution. And most recently, we have more support from the government. Not exactly the money to the people, to the growers, seed, but the ministry understand we can work better, not only in soy, not only in corn, meat, but in pulses is very, very interesting too. And now with this new is not only one wave, okay, in plant protein, but we understand that this will continue. Plant protein consume and the pulses inside this is, we believe, will be more and more. And the government understand this and working together. The first that the government did in this way was one plan. And this plan built with the private companies, with the growers, and one agreement. What is important to arrive in 500,000 tons to export? How we can work in this way? And I believe this organization that appear here in this market will be more and more fruits in the near future.
Thank you, Marcelo. Thank you. So speaking of exports, Martin, I wanted to ask you about the export destinations for color beans. Have there been any changes? What's happening with Argentina's export situation?
Well, Argentina used to sell color beans to all 5 continents, but just speaking for a few destinations. Regarding the red kidney beans, our main destinations are Spain, Italy, Portugal, and we also sell something to Pakistan, among some destinations. For light red kidney beans, our main destination is United Arab Emirates, and then we used to sell also to Portugal, to Colombia, and to Panama and whole Caribbean area. For blacks, our main destination, of course, is Brazil, but we also sell something to Costa Rica. Chile is also growing a lot for demand. We are selling there also, and of course Venezuela. For cranberry beans, we sell to Pakistan, to Turkey, and also to Europe, Spain, Italy, and the Balkan area, like Croatia, Bosnia. These are the main destination for Argentinian color beans.
Excellent. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll go to some of the audience questions. Meng, you mentioned that Thailand, there were 3,000 tons, I think you said, of exports of kidney beans from Thailand to China. Is this going into canning? What's happening with this?
For Thailand, I think the quality they cannot use for canning. They only use for the food stuff with the filling. Just like used for the mooncake, because China have some very traditional festival. They need every family need eating the cake.
So for mooncake.
Also some for the wholesaler. Yeah.
Very interesting. Interesting. Okay, that's an interesting development. With that, let's move to the questions. Hopefully, we have some. Looks like we have quite a few. Okay, the first question, China, what are the figures for light speckled kidney beans? Do you see a chance for cranberry getting into China?
Yes, I think so. Because actually this year, the light speckled kidney beans launched to India. The price low, we sell 1,000, maybe 1,050. To today, the market price is 1,100. So compared with last 5 years, the price reached very low. Also, local market, China use the light speckled beans for the canning for Yemen market. Yemen market is huge demand for the light red kidney beans, but they use the light speckled beans make the canning. We sell many cargo also in local canning factory.
As long as you're talking about light speckled kidney beans, one member asked, what's the split of the 50,000 tons between the long shape and cranberry type light speckled kidney beans? What's the split more or less?
Yes, from Xinjiang type, maybe this year now finished the planting already. Because the snowing, west of China, even if last month they have bad weather, snowing. So this year maybe the quantity will drop around 10,000 metric tons. But last year's the rich harvest maybe 18,000 metric tons.
Okay. The next question I'm going to ask of both Marcelo and Martin. We'll start with Marcelo and then cut you off when we need to get some time for Martin. Looks like black bean production in Argentina will be around 165,000 metric tons. Of those, what is your best guess that Brazil will buy, more or less?
Well, as I said, in order not to get confused, regarding exports, we are expecting 140,000 metric tons. Okay. Of course, we have something around 20,000 metric tons for carryover, but export we are expecting now is 140,000 metric tons. Brazil is quite unpredictable. You know, with 200 million Brazilians eating beans every day, it's quite unpredictable. Of course, we are following on daily basis the production area in Brazil, what is happening with the weather conditions in Brazil to know. Of course, if Brazilian crop is bigger or quality is good in Brazil, they will buy less in Argentina and the other way. If Brazil needs beans, they will buy a huge volume in Argentina. On the other side, we are also paying attention with all this immigration from Venezuela coming into even Argentina, Chile, and some other countries. There are some demand from other countries also growing. So besides Brazil, we are also getting some demand from other destinations. So.
Okay, great. From your perspective, from the Brazilian perspective, how do you see Argentina?
I believe we can do a mix in the next.
No, do the cranberry yet. What do you think Brazil's imports of black beans are going to be like from Argentina?
We lose part of the crop in the south, okay, with the weather, a lot of rain. But the most important that we lose this year was the quality. We have the beans there, but the quality is not so good. And can happen that the people that seeding on this time in the third crop under irrigation, maybe we will have more in this area because the people know the south lose part of the beans. But Brazil will import from Argentina because we have not only because we are short, but strategic is interesting. Is near, is not and the border is easy to import. And another point is you can buy 300 tons or 500 tons in the same quality, same appearance. This is good too. Then it's very, very hard now preview this. And the first time we thought the Brazil will import very, very small fuel quantity. But after this rain, we believe we will import more. Maybe around this number my colleague here predict. Agree? Yes, it will be possible.
You agree, okay. All right, so I see where you were going here with combining the questions. So figure is going to depend more or less on the damage that you see from the rains in the south. You already answered. Thank you, Marcelo. So speaking of rains, someone says that rains are forecasted for this weekend in Argentina, and how do you see that affecting the quality of the cranberry beans, which seem to be fairly susceptible to rain late in the season?
Yes, of course, rains is a big challenge in our industry. I would not panic yet. For the time being, as I said, the first lot we are getting from the fields are very, very good quality. And that is why we are getting demand from traditional destinations for Argentinian cranberry beans. But of course, we will need to follow up the rains during weekend.
Okay. Next question, Tewodros. What is the position of the Ethiopian government in trading white pea beans at ECX platform? And I think they're saying, are they going to implement traceability? I'm not sure what the reference is to pest issues. Can you tell us a little bit about traceability and ECX in Ethiopia?
When the small white pea beans started to be traded at the ECX, was just products were coming in from everywhere and getting into the ECX warehouses for a trade. Right now, because of the pesticide issues and other quality issues, ECX have started to work on the traceability issue by identifying all the market areas. They have already identified around 40-50 primary markets where the product is coming from, and also to go back to the farm level to identify and put up a traceability system in the products coming into the ECX. Regarding the pesticide issue, also that's also a work in progress. Mostly government is also intervened, and now almost, and also of course with the help of GPC, we are working together with the GPC. We have a committee working on a pesticide issue, on MRL. We call it MRL committee. We are working together with the Ethiopian Ministry of Agriculture. What they have done right now is they have already trained 15,000 development agents, workers, to go down to the farm level, training the farmers how to apply to the fumigant chemicals and the limits and so on. So that's still work in progress, but we have seen a lot of progress in that. The white pea beans, Ethiopia produce around, by average, let's say 45,000 metric tons every year. 20,000, around 20,000 metric tons goes to the aid program. The rest is export commodities, goes mostly to Europe and other destinations. Right now we can say whatever Ethiopia produces is already exported. Very few quantities left.
Yep.
And within the export quantity, we haven't seen that much really a pesticide issue that we have been seeing before. I'm not saying it has already it's like gone, but it's still there, but it has progressed a lot.
Okay. So one last question related to Argentina. I've heard several people asking this question out in the hallway. With some of the crop planted late this year in Argentina, how concerned are you about the frost situation?
Well, Argentina, and we could see this during the whole week, Argentina is in the market for selling now, so still it's not a big issue for us. Of course, we are following on daily basis, or I would say on an hour basis, the weather conditions in Argentina, because we are just on the crucial part of the harvest, but still it's not a big concern, because as I said, for all color beans, Argentina is in the market for selling, and exhibition convention was very active for us.
Okay, perfect. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. If you have any additional questions you'd like to ask the panelists, find them in the hallways. I want to thank Joe, Meng, Tewodros, Martin, and Marcelo for participating. Very good job. Appreciate it.